Good evening. We're going to start in just a minute for our last teachers meeting. And before we get started, I just want to stream this on my personal page. Kitsun, I'm just sharing this on my page. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, I'd like to say good evening to everyone who is tuned in live or is watching in stealth mode without clicking in. I want to say good evening to you. And to those who are watching the replay, either on this Facebook page or on my YouTube channel, I just want to say good evening to you. This is our last class together. This is our 13th Sabbath of this quarter, the final quarter, the final lesson of this quarter, which has been fantastic. And so we've been together 12 sessions. This is our 12th and final session for now. As I explained last week, and some of you know that my home church, the Alpharetta Seventh-day Adventist Church in Alpharetta, Georgia, is launching an evangelistic effort, which is our first in our new home church. They're in Alpharetta, and they've asked me and another gentleman to conduct the meetings over the 2 long weekends. So I really want to give all of my attention to preparing for that. So I won't be doing the teachers meeting, but for those of you who've been following, I'm just praying that you have gleaned some things to use in your classes. And Kitson, first time listener, okay. Brother Kitson, for those of you who don't know, is a friend of mine and a very encouraging friend. And one of the people has told me, listen, don't worry about, because I was like 9 to 9:30. That was it. Kitson was like, man, just the people that it's okay. Keep going. Thank you for that. Ricky, I can't believe it either. Man, it's our last session together. And but we've had a good time. Man, we've had a great time. I'm not saying this is my last time forever. I'm just saying that this next quarter, starting next week, we won't be having our normal teachers meeting. Now, with that being said, I want to do something a little bit different tonight. Normally, I give you an outline that you can use either in your class or just as a roadmap for you to construct your things. But I think tonight, I just want to share some basic principles for facilitating a class that I just want to reinforce some of these principles we've talked about. Last week, I taught in my home church. And for those of you who were on our call last Thursday night, I told you things might change. My habit is that all throughout the week, I start gathering material. I'll just read things that have some connection to where I feel the theme of the lesson is going to. And a lot of it I just capture and maybe put in a Word document, and don't worry about trying to figure it all out. I just amass information that piques my interest, and I'll chase something over here, and I'll find a quotation over there, and I just gather it all together. And as I'm doing that, I'm starting to formulate what it is that I want to talk about. As I've said every week, that the number one question that we have to ask ourselves as the facilitators of our class, when we look at the lesson for the week is, how can this lesson help the people in my class? I want to stress strongly that for those of you who have not ventured out, that you move away from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, rereading the lesson to the people that come out to your class. Don't do that. Just don't do it. There's a myriad of reasons why you should not do it. But as a Sabbath school person, as a person whose ministry is all about Sabbath school, that's what I love. That's where my passion is. I won't go to a Sabbath school that just reads the lesson to me. I'll just do like everyone else, and I'll come toward the end of Sabbath school and just enjoy the service. I am not coming out for someone to read the lesson to me. I did that at home. I want you to stimulate my mind on the subject, and that's what I want you to do as teachers. Sabbath school is a Bible-based group discussion. It's not a lecture. It's not a mini sermon. It's a Bible-based group discussion, which means on Sabbath, when you get out of your vehicle or mode of transportation, I want you to go in without your quarterly, because you studied it all week. I want you to teach with just your Bible. That's all I want people to see in your hand is your Bible. And I emphasize over and over that we should lead our classes in a way that a visitor can not only enjoy and follow, but participate. That's what we want. We want to have our classes open. Many people say that, like when I do a workshop at a church, we'll talk about Sabbath school, and they'll say, well, Sabbath school, we would do some brainstorm. We do some breakout exercises. Listen, if you haven't invited me to your church like Kitson have, Kitson's invited me to his church. He made it happen, had a great time up in Connecticut at his church. You should invite me to your church. But one of the things that people say when we do our little sessions is that Sabbath school is a source of evangelism. And I have to be just real with all of us that in many instances, Sabbath school is not a source of evangelism. It can be, it should be, but the way that we often conduct Sabbath school is not a source of evangelism. It's people getting together to talk about what they already know to people who already know it. And we look around, we think we had a great time, and generally speaking, I'm generalizing, it's just senior citizens. We're just senior citizens out there holding our bonds of fellowship together. It's got to be more than that. So I'm going to emphasize tonight some of the principles just to drill them in on our last time together that I really, really want you to hone in on. Amen, Ricky. Sabbath school has the unique ability to not only draw people, but it is, to me, the key mechanism in our church for discipleship. Sermons have their place. You know, people are blessed by sermons, but Sabbath school done right is where the church opens their Bibles, and as a church family, we look, examine, and we learn and share and grow, and you play a part in that. God has tapped you to play a part in that. And it's really fitting with this week's lesson, a community of servants, to not only talk about how we should serve our communities, our neighborhoods, and the less fortunate, but how you, in your role as a Sabbath school teacher, that is a part of service. If you are putting in the time and preparing and praying for your members and being involved in what's happening, that's a source of service. This week's lesson, I'm not going to go over it like I normally do, but I just want to drop some thoughts on it because I've looked at it Yes, Christina. The last one for now. I thought about this week's lesson and I almost published an article. I used to write regularly for SSNet, the online service. I love ssnet.com. And I just got too busy and stopped writing articles. But some of you know for years I wrote articles for SSNet. And I wanted to this week because this is a prime lesson to really galvanize what we think about church. And this week's lesson, if we think seriously about it, it reinforces the purpose of church. The reason the church was organized was for service, not to have a good time in worship. That's not why the church was organized. The church was organized for service. And if you just look at some of the text that the author of this lesson shared, there is every indication that the church has a purpose. Okay, the church has a purpose, and one of the controversial ways that I explore this is I counter one of the common sayings that we often hear is that the church is a hospital for sinners, a hospital for sinners. I take exception to that. I don't believe that. I don't believe the church is a hospital for sinners. I believe that Jesus is the great physician and we all come to him for healing, but we don't join the church to get healed. If the church is a hospital for sinners, when do you get discharged from the hospital? Who's ever gone to a hospital and said, man, I love it here. I'm going to stay in this hospital, for the rest of my life? No, you go to the hospital and every day you're like, Doc, when can I go home? The church is not a hospital for sinners. And we say that because we use that to justify why we fall short, like why we justify not being Christ-like. We just say, oh, we're a hospital for sinners, like don't judge. But the church is organized for service. So this is an opportunity, this lesson, to do that. So let me I just went off. Kitson is already ahead of me on how to start the lesson off. I'm going to share just kind of go over the principles that I want you to keep in mind as you go forward. And remember, just if you ever get in a jam between now and the next time we start these up, send me an email, send me a Facebook message, or call me up, and I'll be happy to help if you need some advice for your church or for Sabbath school related things. Give me a call. I'll be happy to help you. And I'll share some things from my last workshop. I did a workshop 2 weeks ago. I want to share some things from that workshop too, some of the things that I learned. But here's a basic premise. That's you. That's your class. Your job, get it off the ground. This is all familiar to you. Go somewhere, land someplace on purpose without getting hijacked. Okay? That's your job. Take your class on a journey, get the plane up in the air, take them someplace that is relevant, that you know where you're going to land. The way to get them off the ground, which Kitson has already talked about, one of the ways that I do, you have to get people's hands in the air. The number one skill that you have to develop as a teacher, that you have to constantly develop, is the ability to ask great questions. That's your number one skill. Listen, I know Bible knowledge is vital to being a Sabbath school teacher, but the number one skill that you must master if you're going to have interaction is you must learn how to ask great questions. I've gone to classes where teachers have tried to ask hard, deep questions. And really, they're just showing, hey, I'm so smart. I'm asking you something no one can answer. And there's no profit in that. I just want to get people involved. Jesus' method of teaching all throughout the Bible was he asked questions and he told parables. And I cannot improve on his method of teaching, which means that a lot of my Sabbath school is based around asking questions and telling Bible stories. I haven't found a way to do it any better than the way Jesus did it. And I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. Ask questions. My first question, which Kitchen said earlier, I use a definition question. You don't have to do that. You might want to talk about you might find another way to get the class involved. Maybe some kind of illustration or something clipped from the headlines or a news article. Or don't limit yourself to just doing what I do. I have my way of doing it. You have your way of doing it. All I'm saying is that to get this plane off the air, you need people involved. If you spent 30 of the 40 minutes talking, then you didn't hit the mark. If you spent the majority of the time in your class, you were doing the talking, you didn't hit the mark. You might have said some good stuff. You might have said some really good stuff, but you have to get people involved in the class. So my goal is not to show the class how smart I am, but to take them on a spiritual journey. And this is my notes from last week. This is what I went in last Sabbath at my home church. I did a Facebook Live video Sabbath morning. I was really hoping that they could stream it, but there were some technical issues. We don't normally stream our Sabbath school, and there were some technical issues. We couldn't get it done. But I told my class, those of you who follow the lesson, that on Sabbath morning, my custom is to get up early Sabbath morning and finalize my lesson. That's just my way. Some people, they want it done Friday evening, but I just have a habit of doing that. But on Sabbath morning, everything shifted for me. The approach that I was going to take in class changed, and I was obedient to the Spirit, and we spent time talking about, I think I'll just go over this with you right quick. Kitsa, you'll allow me to go over a little bit, just how this morphed into. Last week, the title was To Love Mercy. I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. And because it was my class, that's what I did. I told the class that I was renaming the lesson. I was going to take the liberty to rename the lesson to Living a Life Without Worry. That was the essence of the class for me. That's what I took away from the lesson. So to start off, I said, listen, we're going to be talking about how to live without worry. I did my normal thing. I gave instructions, lessons, say whatever you want, just as long as you keep it short and keep it on topic. I want everyone to participate. I always say that now. And I said, what does the word worry mean to you? So I could get hands up and hands all over the church. Anybody else? Oh, tell me more about that. Anybody else ever share? Does anybody else want to share what the word worry means to them? Okay, we did that. And then I said, listen, let's just imagine that we are shipwrecked on an island. And all we have is this little piece of scripture, which is Matthew chapter 6, verse 25 through 33. That's all we have on this island. And we're going to see what we can learn from that. So what we did, I had different volunteers who read different parts of the text. And we stopped after certain texts were read. And my question was not, all right, class, this is what this means. My question, because I need participation, was, class, what do these verses tell us about worry? That's what we did. And so many people participated. People that never say a word in Sabbath school were looking at their Bibles, visitors included, saying, I think this verse is telling us that that if God takes care of birds, whatever it is, that he's got a plan for you. So we drilled down on that because I want you to follow. If you're going to teach from your Bible, follow this method and you'll be safe. I promise you, if you follow that method, you will be safe. And it works. So here's what I did. Here's what I tell you every week. And on our last week together, here is what I want you to do. So we were reading Matthew chapter 6. And again, I told them, listen, we're just pretending that we're on a shipwreck on an island. This is all we have, which means I kept the conversation when people will refer or be tempted to refer to something outside of what was in these texts. We just kept it focused, okay? What are these texts telling us about worry, okay? And we were reading Matthew chapter 26. We started at verse 25. So I had somebody read verses 25 through 27, and they read those. And then when they read the text, so here's the formula. I first asked a question. And my first question was, what is worry? That was my first question. I got multiple answers. I want to emphasize multiple. I got multiple answers, even though the first answer given to me was the perfect answer. But I need more participation. So I'm going to say, hey, does anybody else want to share? And after they do that, after we've shared enough and we've examined it, gone back and forth a little bit, I say, can I get a volunteer to read a Bible text? Either a Bible text one or Bible text plural, doesn't matter, whatever the situation calls for. And when they read the text, I now start the process over. I ask a question. Class, what do these texts tell us about not worry? Some answers. Can I get another volunteer to read some more texts? They read the text, same thing. Now, these texts seem to indicate that so-and-so and so-and-so. What do you think it's really saying about whatever it is that I want to talk about? I just asked a question. Now I'm getting answers. Well, I think that text is telling us that, that even though we shouldn't worry, we still should be responsible. We had an interesting take on that, Sabbath. And whatever it is, I'm just enjoying the dialogue. I'm enjoying to see people looking at their Bibles, not just listening to me talk, okay? And I just did that a couple of times, and our time was going so fast, we were running out of time, and we were just getting going. And one of the points that, oh man, this is some good stuff. I wish I could do Sabbath school again. This is some good stuff here. But it's all based on the Bible. And then toward the end, as my custom is, I told a story to tie it all together. I told you the story I was going to tell last week, and I stuck with that story this past Sabbath. It was still the story I wanted to tell, but to tie the lesson together on not worrying about tomorrow, I told the story of the widow with two mites. I tied that into generosity, tied that into giving, that she loved God so much she had to express it. When God says he loves a cheerful giver, she had to express it. And when she expressed it, by doing so, when Jesus said, look at this woman, pay careful attention to what you're seeing happening. Her giving was an expression that she trusted her tomorrow to God. And many times that's where I fail. That I sometimes don't see around the corner well enough and worry that maybe God is just not focused on me right now. So I take matters into my own hand. But the widow's story told me that's not the way to do it. So I just want to emphasize that to you again, that this is the formula I want you to take. Okay, let me share a few more things before we get out of here. To sort of recap what we've done so far for our last 12 weeks, some of the things I emphasized, I want to just share some of those with you. Your job is not just to be a history teacher in Sabbath school. That's not your job. Just every Sabbath you get up and give a lot of Bible information. I'm not coming out to just hear a lot of Bible information. It's got to be more than a history class, okay? Your job is to inspire your members in your class and encourage. That doesn't mean we don't talk about the truth or hard topics, but your job is not to beat people up in your class and make them feel bad and while you look superior. Your job, in my opinion, what makes a class enjoyable, that one that people say, oh man, I had a great time, man, you really spoke to me, or I want to come back next week, is to inspire them to reach higher in their Christian experience. And at the same time, to encourage them on how to deal with everyday life. If you can do that, they'll come to your class. Not just because you gave out some great information, but if you can inspire people, okay, I need to trust God more. I really should trust God more. I shouldn't worry as much as I should. And you told that story of how the widow trusted her God for her tomorrow. I should do that too. If he would take care of the birds and the beautiful grass, he'll take care of me. That's encouraging me to deal with life. I'll come back to your class, okay? So make sure you do that. Inspire and encourage, not just give information. Another thing I want you to remember to do is to have some energy. Listen, I'm saying this in love. I really am. I'm saying this in love. If while you're teaching class, you just happen to do this and you notice that there's no pulse, man, I think I'm dead. You should just stop your class and say, hey, I need to go to the hospital because I'm dead. Listen, have some life. If you don't have any life, if you're not enthused about your class, why do you think somebody else is going to be enthused about your class? Show some energy, show some enthusiasm. People in your class feed off of your energy. So listen, I'm not saying go crazy. Don't be running up and down the aisles and sweating out your clothes and spitting all over people. I'm not saying do that. But show some energy. As I tell people often, listen, I'm a very shy person. I'm very reserved. For those of you who know me personally, I kind of stay to myself. I'm just happy, me and my wife, just being at home. I don't need to be the center of attention. And I'm not the person that walks in the room and, the room comes alive. But when it's time for me to lead my class, I need to lead my class and show some energy. I'm just begging you, show some energy, okay? Yes. Show some energy. Okay, so I want you to inspire and encourage and show some energy. And remember, why we do what we do. If I was to ask you, the first question I ask at every church I am invited to, and again, invite me to your church. I'd be happy to spend all day with you talking about how to do Sabbath school, I think, a little better. But the very first question that I ask every church, and those of you who I've been to your churches, you know it's true. The first question I ask is, what are we trying to accomplish in Sabbath school? And invariably, it will be confirmed that often we are all on different pages. And usually all the things we're saying that we are trying to accomplish in Sabbath school, 95% of those are not happening. In our head, they're happening because we say, oh, we want people to come to study their Bibles more. And we don't even use our Bibles in Sabbath school. We want people to love Jesus more, whatever. And we don't even talk about Jesus. It's just theory. So we have to get on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish. And Sabbath school is, if you sum it up, if I sum it up, it is discipleship through fellowship. Discipleship through fellowship, which means that the reason we get together is to grow as Christians. Okay? That's why we get together. And we will not grow if we neglect our Bibles. We might become more versed at church jargon, but we're not going to grow. And as Sabbath school teachers, I am convinced in my own life that Sabbath school does more for me than it does for the people in my class. People in my class are blessed. We have a great time without fail. But I know that because of my class, I had to find time to study my Bible. That though Atlanta is busy and I can wake up every day and my day is gone. It's just stuff to do. But I have to teach Sabbath. I have to be ready. I'm going to spend some time with my Bible. So I thank God for the ministry. And for some of you, Sabbath school and ministry is doing as much for you as you think you are doing for other people. That God is saying, hey, I need to give this person something to do, some extra motivation so that they can stay close to me. The last thing I want to share with you before we end now tonight, and if you have any questions, Sherman, hey man, thanks for joining. Unfortunately, this is my last of 12 classes. I've been doing this every Thursday for 12 weeks. And unfortunately, this is the last one I'm doing for now because I have a big responsibility in my church that's going to take up a lot of my time to prepare that I would normally use to prepare to do this class. So unfortunately, this is my last class. If you'd asked me 12 weeks ago, I would say every Thursday at 9 p.m. However, some of the classes are archived on here and on my YouTube page. I haven't decided if I'm going to keep them up there or not. But when I come back, I will post as much as I can. I spend money on Facebook to send out ads about it and try to give everyone a heads up that the class will take place. So when I resume, because one day I'm going to do it again because we just had such a good time. But I want to leave this text with you that is the Bible text for, I feel that is the number one Bible text for Sabbath school teachers. There is not a week that I lead out a class, whether it's 10 or 100 or 1,000, I have the same need. I need God to bless me. I need him to bless the class. I need him to help me to prepare. I need him to keep me through the week so I'm in the right frame of mind. And spiritual things are spiritually discerned. I can't trust my own wisdom. I have to claim every week, and I'm imploring you as a Bible teacher to claim the promise in James 1:5. If any of you, that's anybody, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. That's a promise you should be claiming. I don't have the wisdom on how to, Brother Hall's been sharing all this stuff, and I'm not just sure how to do it, and I'm not sure if I can say, I don't remember how he did it, and I don't have that skill, and I'm not a good enough teacher. Claim that promise. Lord, give me the wisdom to lead this class coming Sabbath. I want it to be energetic. I want to inspire people. I want to encourage people. I want to make sure hijackers don't take over my class. I want to make sure that I take them someplace that's relevant, that where they land, that's relevant. Give me the wisdom to do that. He'll do it. I guarantee he'll do it. He's done it for me. He's never failed me yet. Never. And I've been teaching class for years, and I cannot look back and say, well, God didn't come through for me. Sometimes when I'm teaching the class, I feel like, hey, things aren't going right. Something's just not off. Something's off a little bit. And I'm silently praying while we're discussing, Lord, fix this class for me. He'll do it for you. I think I'm going to close with a story. I told you about a story. Remember, your job is to take your class on a journey without getting hijacked. Get the plane up in the air, which means get hands up in the air. Every week I've gone over how to get hands up in the air, including today, okay? Get participation. Don't ask and answer your own question. Don't ask questions that are so hard no one can answer. Don't ask questions that only people who studied the lesson can answer. Don't do that. Everything we do should be done from the eyes of a visitor. How would a visitor be able to function in our class? Okay. Kitson, I haven't decided. I might archive these. I haven't decided. You would think it's a no-brainer, but anyway, I was thinking of this story that so Jesus is got a crowd of people, and there's so many people because he always attracted crowds. Like he was so sweet and kind and considerate and so loving that he just attracted people. Hordes of people would just almost trample just to be near him. Of course, their haters were there too. There's always going to be haters in anything that's positive. So he's at this place, and the people are in rapture listening to his words. They're just like, the things he are saying that are coming out of his mouth are just so engrossing that they are there all day, and his disciples are being proactive. And they're like, I like this about the disciples. They're saying, hey, he's so caught up in this, he don't realize, these people haven't eaten all day. And so they're being proactive. So that's what, you want your people to do. So they say, well, so Jesus, hey, you send the people to go get something to eat. Jesus turns to his disciples, who he came there with. They hang out together. They're together. They live together. He says, you give them something to eat. I'm sure the disciples are like, what? He said, you give them something to eat. And he meant what he said. He just wasn't saying things. He was training the church. He's training these men on how to lead the church. He says, you do it. Don't send them anywhere. You do it. And then the story goes on when, when he says, well, listen, have the people get organized, because somebody say, here's a little food, here's a little food. Have the people get organized. And then as he break the bread and gave it to the disciples, it just multiplied. That is the formula that we are to follow. Oftentimes we say, well, I can't do it. Jesus saying, you do it. Let's follow the same formula. Get organized, and as you receive from me, what the people need will multiply and be sufficient for their needs. But I have to be the source of what you're giving the people. And that's all I want you to be as Sabbath school teachers. Let Jesus be the source. Don't ever lead a class. Never, ever lead a class without having Jesus as the center of your class. I don't care what it is. You can't go wrong if I be lifted up. I want to thank everyone who joined tonight. Everyone who joined. And especially I want to thank those who are the familiar names that I see that join consistently every week. I want to say thank you. That means a lot to me when I log on and I see your names come up. I want to thank those of you, Ricky and Don, who took the time Don, when I was in New York, who came and took the time out of his busy day to come and to meet me, and Ricky, who came to my home church for Sabbath school one week. That meant a lot to me. You just don't realize the kindness you showed to me, and just cements us as a family. We're a family. The church, we're a family, but the church was organized for service. Let's encourage each other as we see the day approaching, and God's going to bless our efforts. Thank you all. Thank you, my friend Jamie. Thank you all for joining. I want God to bless you. Always aim high, and I promise you're going to hit the mark. And I'll talk to you on the other side. God bless.